This is Dr. Chen from Taiwan, Taichung Veteran General Hospital in Taichung, Taiwan. Today I'm going to present an topic about anterior bone loss after cervical Baguera C Disc versus Bryan Disc Arthroplasty. I'm Dr. Chen, and we have a few colleagues here listed here, all from the same hospital. Our study begins with the observation after cervical disc arthroplasty, which is the implantation of the artificial disc into the cervical spine. As we can see, this is the immediate post-operative radiograph showing the end plate fit perfectly with the Bryan disc. But with time goes by, after 3 to 6 months, there's a obvious regression of the cervical vertebrae and the exposure of the artificial disc. In the same time, we don't find any migration or dislodgement or any other side effects or adverse events about the artificial disc. So this is, in our view, this is purely a bone remodeling process. We can see the vertebrae become much more smaller compared to other unoperated vertebrae. This is another case showing after the artificial disc implantation, the lower adjacent vertebrae become regressed. The artificial disc was exposed. In the same time, we noticed that the same patient had the ACDF in the same time. It has the fusion with the pig cage. This is the Zimmer pig cage. And similar regression or remodeling of the cervical vertebral body was not found in the ACDF level. So this is a phenomenon mostly seen in the artificial disc. This is yet another case showing that after Bryan disc implantation, there's both upper and lower end plate regression. This is so-called anterior bone loss in our study. We can see this is not only body contour change, this is the original body contour, and it becomes flat and progressed to a more posterior side. And there's also disappearance of the original spur compared to image immediately post-operation. There's some literature discussing the phenomena. The first one is published in 2015. They retrospectively reviewed 37 cases, and this is the first published study depicting bone loss after cervical TBR. And there's another paper in JNS. It performed complete radiological assessment in 135 patients. This is the first large study depicting bone loss after cervical TBR. The third paper is a 48 patients treated by 5 spine surgeons, and those data were analyzed. Different authors in different papers, they have different theories of the phenomenon, but they have no consensus or determined mechanism of what happened in the post-operative cervical spine. The first study of our group was published in 2020 in the Spine Journal. This is the main study on Bryan disc. The radiological measurement we done was mainly on the lateral radiographs, both in neutral position, flexion position, and extension. In neutral position, we measured the lordotic angle and the shell angle of the artificial disc. And in flexion and extension, we measured the global alignment angle of C2 to C7. And in extension position, This tool can calculate the range of motion or RM, and we also calculate the index level, the level that was operated on the segmental alignment angle, inflection and extension, and calculate the RM of these two angles. There are a total of 121 patients have included in our study. As we can see, about 40% of the patients were found to have anterior bone loss. And this is a figure showing that the bone loss phenomenon peaked at about 6 months and never progressed beyond 1 year post-operation. After the publish of our paper, there's more and more people notice the subject. So there's a review article published in European Spine Journal. It's called Affiliation after Cervical Disc Arthroplasty. The review article collected many similar articles, but ours were also included. But the review article thought they regarded anterior bone loss as early stage of osteolysis, but we disagree on that. Osteolysis is a phenomenon that involves wear debris and the destruction of bony end plates and the vertebrae, which is different from the anterior bone loss we are discussing. And after the Bryan Disc study, we move on to the Baguera C Disc. This is the serial radiograph showing patient underwent cervical disc arthroplasty with Baguera C Disc. We can see there's virtually no change of the body contour. This is case figure showing that a normal patient without anterior bone loss would look like. We can see there's a small spurs in the angles of the vertebral body were the same 6 months after operation compared to that immediate after operation. The next patient, there's some change of body contour in the following months after the operation. We can see this is more angular shape and the vertebral body become more flat. This is a more severe form of anterior bone loss. We can see after the operation, the artificial disc was well covered by the cervical vertebrae, but after 3 to 6 months after operation, the vertebral body regressed and the artificial disc was exposed. This is another case showing minor or mild anterior bone loss. We can see the spur. Spur was found in the post-operation radiogram, but the spur gradually disappeared in the following months, as can be seen in the serial radiogram. As we can see, there's a small gap between the artificial disc and the vertebrae immediately after the operation, because the artificial disc cannot be fit perfectly into every single patient's disc space. But when the time goes by, the spur disappeared and the remodeling process would make the bone more fit, or the implant more fit to the vertebral disc space. This is called the implant bone integration. So we have seen a lot of anterior bone loss in the Baguera C Disc patients. So we performed a retrospective study of total of 205 patients who underwent the CDA during 2014 and 2020. But some of the patients with inadequate follow-up time or more than one level of the TTL were excluded. The radiological assessments were generally the same with the Bryan study. It included the global alignment, the lordotic angle, the shear angle, and the range of motion of the whole spine and the surgical level. A total of 77 patients who underwent one level CDA with Baguera C Disc was included in our study. Most of them have surgery on C45 or C56. As we can see, the percentage of anterior bone loss was much more higher than expected, and is much more higher than Bryan Disc as in our previous study. You can see 67 to 70 to 78% of patients underwent CDA with Baguera C Disc was found to have anterior bone loss. And the exact number were not shown here, but I will present with you the general results. We also found that in patients with Baguera C Disc, the shear angle was strongly related to anterior bone loss in CDA with Baguera C Disc. That is, the larger the shear angle is, the more likely the patient to have anterior bone loss. And there's also some interesting points. We found that there's a slight female predominance found in ABL with Baguera C Discs. That is, that female patients were more prone to have anterior bone loss after the CDA surgery. And we also found that smaller mismatch of the implant and the implants plays a crucial role in anterior bone loss. That means that the mismatch between the implant and the implant, the smaller it is, the more likely you will have to have anterior bone loss. And such hybrid surgery was also associated with less anterior bone loss with Baguera C Disc. This is the time course of our results. We can also see that most of the anterior bone loss happened in 3 to 6 months, and very few developed beyond 1 year. This is generally our result. And next in discussion, we would like to discuss why the anterior bone loss was mainly found in cervical arthroplasty, but not found in anterior cervical fusion. As we know, the main difference between cervical arthroplasty and the anterior cervical fusion is that the index level or the level being operated on would can have its ROM range of motion after the surgery, but anterior cervical fusion, the two vertebrae fuse into another one, so there's no ROM after ACDF. So that's the key point. We want to find out what the mobile nature of the operated cervical arthroplasty would lead to anterior bone loss. This is a schematic illustration of our hypothesis. As we can see, in ACDF segment, the loading force of our head is more evenly distributed throughout the end plate of the surgical level. We can see the cage is no ROM, so the loading force would be distributed evenly in the anterior part and the posterior part during flexion and extension. However, in the case of CDA or arthroplasty, there's an artificial disc. So due to the excision of the anterior longitudinal ligament ALL and the preservation and intactness of the posterior spinal structures, the anterior part of the cervical spine were more free, and so the So the shear angle tend to be larger after the CDA surgery compared to before. The larger shear angle in the flexion extension or in the mobile during flexion extension during our motion will lead to uneven distribution of the loading force. While during flexion, the loading force were not shift to the anterior part a lot because the restriction of the posterior ligaments. But during extension, the larger shear angle would lead to more a tendency of the loading force to load on the posterior side of the artificial disc and on the end plate. So after CDA, we can see there's uneven distribution of the loading force, and the smaller loading force on the anterior part of the cervical vertebrae would lead to bone remodeling and the regression or anterior bone loss of the anterior part of the cervical vertebrae. This is the hypothesis we propose, but here from now we only have some retrospective and a very observational study to prove it. This is hypothesis. We hypothesize that the more lordotic curve after cervical arthroplasty exerts less stress on the anterior aspect of cervical body, which leads to bone resorption, or in bone remodeling, it favors bone resorption. And in the discussion session, many more patients than predicted had anterior bone loss, both in Bryan disc and in Baguera disc. And increasing the shear angle of the artificial disc may increase the incidence of anterior bone loss after cervical disc arthroplasty. Further study of the biomechanics following CDA should help clarify the mechanisms and groups. An opinion on uneven distribution of the loading force, excessive micromotion, thermal injury, and disruption of the blood supply may all play some role in the process. And we also have some hypotheses regarding why there's more anterior bone loss in Baguera C disc than in Bryan discs. We can see the anterior flange of the Bryan disc would restrict the implantation of the Bryan disc. So the Baguera disc can actually be implanted deeper to fit in the posterior aspect of the vertebral body. That would lead to less loading force on the anterior part of the cervical spine because it has no contact with the artificial disc. So that would be a reason why there's much more anterior bone loss in the Baguera C disc group. And that also implies that the design of artificial disc will actually have a large impact on postoperative biomechanics. So that's a topic worth studying, and the groups designing the artificial disc should pay more attention into the biomechanics after the surgery. Oh, this is what I just said, that the anterior flange of the Bryan disc will limit the implementation of prosthesis. Last but not least, I would like to talk about osteolysis. The most widely accepted osteolysis mechanism involves implanting particle wear debris of any material, which then promotes inflammation that causes long-term tissue damage and bone erosion, leading to implant loosening. But this is the case with anterior bone loss. We can see the vertebrae of the affected cervical spine has intact cortex, and there's no implant failure or further bone erosion. So this is totally different. The anterior bone loss is totally different from osteolysis. Osteolysis mostly have content inflammation and cortex blurring, and even implant failure. This is the case of osteolysis. We can see an osteoma here with disrupted cortical line of the cervical spine. This is case of osteolysis. This is not anterior bone loss. So in our opinion and our clinical experience, anterior bone loss is a different phenomenon from osteolysis. And this is the discussion between Bryan and Baguera C Disc I just mentioned before. Thank you for your attention.